This is something that I've been wrestling with throughout my presidency. When you look at the proposals I put forward, they garner majority support. The majority believes in raising the minimum wage. The majority believes in common sense gun safety rules. The majority believes in investing to rebuild our infrastructure and create jobs. The majority believes in making sure that people aren't going bankrupt when they get sick. The majority agrees with all the individual components of Obamacare. I think there was a Gallup poll this week, subsequent to the election. That showed that the general public has a more favorable view of Democrats than Republicans. And as I noted, my approval ratings are quite high. And yet what's been true during the course of my 8 years is that does not always translate, in fact. Too often it hasn't translated into working majorities either at the state level or at the federal level. Now, some of that is just the nature of our system, and geography. As long as Wyoming gets the same number of senators as California. There's going to be some tilt towards Republicans when it comes to congressional races. The fact that a lot of Democratic voters are bunched up in big cities. And a lot of Republican voters are spread out across geography gives them an advantage when it comes to congressional races. Some of it is just political bad luck. For example, I came in as an economy was in free fall. And although we took the right steps to save the economy, in my midterm election in 2010, people couldn't yet see the recovery and Not surprisingly, the president's party got punished. We lost control of a lot of not just congressional seats, but also gubernatorial seats and state legislative seats. And that happened to be the year that the census is done and you start doing redistricting. And those Republicans took advantage of political gerrymandering to lock in majorities. Even though in numerous subsequent elections, Democrats have actually cast more votes. Or more votes have been cast for Democratic congressional candidates than Republican. And yet you end up having large Republican majorities. So there are just some structural problems that we have to deal with. But, look, you can't make excuses about the rules. That's the deal, and we got to do better. And I think doing better, as I said, involves us working at the grassroots, not ceding territory. Going out into areas where right now we may not stand a chance of actually winning, but we're building up a cadre of young talent. We're making arguments, we're persuading, we're talking about the things that matter to ordinary people. Day to day, and trying to avoid some of the constant distractions that fill up people's Twitter accounts. And if we do that, then I'm confident that we'll be back on track. I don't think that there has to be a complete overhaul here. I think that there does have to be better organization, a smarter message. And one message I do have for Democrats is that a strategy that's just micro-targeting particular discrete groups in a Democratic coalition sometimes will win you elections. but it's not going to win you the broad mandate that you need. And ultimately, the more we can talk about what we have in common as a nation, and speak to a broad set of values. A vision that speaks to everybody and not just one group at a time, the better off we're going to be. I think that's part of the reason why I was able to get elected twice, is that I always tried to make sure that not only in proposals but also in message, that I was speaking to everybody. You had a second part to your question? Question, inaudible. President Obama, ah. Look, I've said before, President Bush could not have been more gracious to me when I came in. And my intention is to, certainly for the next 2 months, is finish my job. And then, after that, to take Michelle on vacation, get some rest. Spend time with my girls, and do some writing, do some thinking. So I want to be respectful of the office and give the president-elect an opportunity to put forward his platform and his arguments without somebody popping off in every instance. As an American citizen who cares deeply about our country, if there are issues that have less to do with the specifics of some legislative proposal or battle, but go to core questions about our values and our ideals. And if I think that it's necessary or helpful for me to defend those ideals, then I'll examine it when it comes. But what I do know is that I have to take Michelle on vacation. Juliet Eilperin. Question, thanks, Mr. President. Given what you just said about the strong differences that you and President Putin have on the future of Syria and the conflict there, can you talk a little about how you see that unfolding? Both at the end of your tenure, at the beginning of Donald Trump's. And whether you have concerns that even if we eliminate the Islamic State in eastern Syria and western Iraq, you may be allowing a permanent al-Qaeda safe haven around Aleppo and inaudible. And on Aleppo, can you say to what extent you think the United States has fulfilled its responsibility to protect in that instance? And then, in terms of finishing your job, which you just mentioned, last week you exercised your executive authority on multiple fronts, finalizing oil and gas leasing rules on public lands. As well as issuing a 5-year leasing plan, banning drilling in the Arctic and the Atlantic. Many Republicans say that you should hold off finalizing any more rules as your headed out the door, because they oppose many of them when they control both the executive and legislative branch next year. What do you say to that suggestion? President Obama, well, on the second question, these are the same Republicans who suggested that they didn't need to confirm a Supreme Court justice when I was 9 months out until the next election. I think their general approach seems to be that probably 2 days after my re-election, I should stop until the next election. I don't think that that's what the Constitution calls for. The regulations that we have issued are ones that we've been working on for a very long time. They've been subject to extensive public notice and comment, and everybody has known they've been out there. These aren't things that we've been surprising people with. They're well considered, they're the right thing to do. They're part of my task of finishing my work. And I recognize that when the new administration comes in, and a new Congress comes in, that they will have the option of trying to undo some of those rules and regulations that we put in place. And that's their prerogative. That's part of how democracy works. But I feel very strongly these are the right things to do, and I'm going to make sure I do them. With respect to Syria, as I said I think even on this trip in a previous press conference, I am not optimistic about the short-term prospects in Syria. Once Russia and Iran made a decision to back Assad in a brutal air campaign and essentially a pacification of Aleppo, regardless of the potential for civilian casualties, children being killed or wounded, schools or hospitals being destroyed, then it was very hard to see a way in which even a trained and committed moderate opposition could hold its ground for long periods of time. And the issue that obviously I've wrestled with for the last 5 years, how involved should the United States be? What are our legal constraints in such involvement? What are our moral obligations? What are our strategic interests? Those haven't changed. I continue to believe that we did not have a legal basis for military intervention there. That it would have been a strategic mistake given the work we still had to do in Iraq. The counter-ISIL campaign, ongoing operations in Afghanistan, that we had worked tirelessly to arrive at. A political transition of some sort that could alleviate the suffering and provide humanitarian access. And we will continue to do that work all the way until the last day that me and John Kerry and others have the authority to speak for the United States government. But ultimately, it takes two, or in this case, 4, or 6, or 8 to tango. And we're just not getting help or interest from those parties that are supporting Assad. And Assad, as a consequence, has been emboldened. Look, this is a man who has decided that destroying his country, turning it to rubble. And seeing its population scattered or killed was worth it for him to cling to power, when he had the option to peacefully engage in. A transition that could have kept the country intact. That's his mentality. That's not a mentality we support. That's a mentality that the Russians and the Iranians have been willing to support. But at this stage, we're going to need to have a change in how all parties think about this in order for us to end the situation there. Now, our ability to go after ISIL I think can be sustained. There's no doubt that there will continue to be extremist forces in and around Syria because it's still going to be in chaos for quite some time. There will be elements in Iraq, just as there have been elements in Afghanistan. Even after the Taliban were swept out, even after we killed bin Laden. But I think we can effectively reduce the risk and take their key external operators off the field.